All right, today we are diving deep into a fascinating, kind of hidden battle that shaped the modern world. We're going back about a century to a time when a war was being fought not with guns and trenches, but with ideas. It was a fight for the very soul of a generation, a struggle to answer one simple but profound question. I mean, think about it for a second. What does it mean to be young? Is it about breaking free? Finding yourself? Maybe just rebelling against your parents? It feels like such a personal question, right? A journey we all go on. But here's the wild part. The very idea of youth as we understand it, well, it's not timeless at all. It had to be invented. And believe me, the answer was anything but clear. Around the turn of the 20th century, a full-blown ideological war erupted between two incredibly powerful and totally opposite forces. Each one had a radical blueprint for what a young person should be, and they were ready for fight for it. So let's set the stage here. Before we had the teenager, youth wasn't really a thing. You were a kid, and then boom, you were an adult with adult responsibilities. This new, in-between stage was a brand new social category, a kind of cultural frontier. And just like any frontier, it was completely up for grabs. This new space, this gap between childhood and adulthood, it created a sort of cultural vacuum. And you know, nature abhors a vacuum. So two very different movements rushed in to fill that void. One championed art, individualism, and rebellion. The other demanded duty, discipline, and sacrifice. And this wasn't some polite debate. This was a culture war for the future. So, in one corner, let's meet our first contender, the Decadents. Now, these were artists, writers, intellectuals, and they looked at the stuffy, boring, materialistic world of their parents and just said, nope, not for us. They pushed this radical new idea that the whole point of life, especially when you're young, is to explore yourself. It was the cult of I, and the absolute poster boy for this whole movement, none other than Oscar Wilde. His novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray, published in 1890, was basically their Bible. It gives us this incredible fantasy, right? A handsome young man who sells his soul, not for money or power, but for eternal youth, so he can explore every single desire without ever facing the consequences. So what does this all mean? Well, the Decadents basically took the rulebook of morality and just threw it out the window. They argued that to be truly alive, you had to dive into the deep, sometimes dark parts of your own mind. It was all about escaping the rigid, hypocritical rules of society and focusing completely on your own inner world. Okay. But not everyone was thrilled with this idea. This whole cult of I thing, it absolutely terrified a lot of very powerful people. For every artist celebrating the self, there was a nationalist who saw that individualism as a dangerous poison that could rot the nation and the empire from the inside out. And when you put these two ideals side by side, you see they couldn't be more different. We're talking polar opposites. On one side, you've got the individualist, the skeptic, the artist. On the other, the team player, the believer, the soldier. It really boils down to two questions. The decadent asks, who am I? And the nationalist asks, how can I serve? And if the Decadents had Oscar Wilde, the nationalists had this. This line comes from a super famous poem about a school kid who dies saving his regiment in some colonial battle. This became their anthem. It says, forget finding yourself. Your job is to play for the team, serve the regiment, sacrifice for the empire. It's all about the collective, not the self. And they got super specific about it. Thinkers like W.H. Davenport Adams literally drew up a checklist for the ideal young man. Every one of these traits, perseverance, purity, discipline, was a brick in the wall of the perfect citizen. This wasn't about finding yourself. It was about forging yourself into a useful, reliable part of the great national machine. Now, this wasn't just a bunch of guys in stuffy rooms arguing about philosophy. Oh no, this conflict exploded out of the books and into real life. It hit the streets, it took over pop culture, and it created massive moral panics. Out of the new, massive industrial cities, a new figure appeared, the street tough. They called them hooligans in London, Apaches in Paris. These were working-class kids with their own style, their own slang, their own gangs. And to the middle classes, they were terrifying. They were the symbol of an independent, uncontrolled youth that the establishment just couldn't tame. So what was the response? Well, it was swift and it was organized. To fight this threat, reformers created new groups like the Boy Brigade, starting way back in 1883. And their goal was crystal clear. Take these wild city kids and hammer them into disciplined, Christian, nationalist citizens, using stuff like military drills and religious instruction. You can really see this cultural chess match play out over a couple of decades. First, you get the decadent fantasy of eternal youth in Dorian Gray. Then, boom, the hooligan panic hits the newspapers. Then you get Peter Pan, another take on eternal youth. And the direct response to all this? The ultimate nationalist handbook, the Boy Scouts, designed from the ground up to train boys for duty. And if you want a really powerful, kind of tragic case study of how this all played out, just look at Germany's Wandervogel movement, the Wandering Birds. It started out as this romantic, free-spirited movement of kids hiking in the countryside to escape their boring middle-class lives. But here's the incredible irony. In their search for total freedom, they ended up creating their own super rigid rules and structures. And over time, that free spirit hardened and was eventually swallowed whole by the rising tide of German nationalism. So why does any of this matter now? Because this fight, this fundamental battle from over 100 years ago, it didn't just disappear. It actually created the blueprints, the very templates, for pretty much every youth movement and conflict that came after it. I mean, both of these visions cast incredibly long shadows. That decadent ideal of self-expression, that's the DNA of the beatniks, the hippies, the punks, all the way to today's influencers. But you can't ignore the other side. That nationalist ideal of duty and sacrifice for the group, it became an incredibly powerful force that fueled the huge mass political movements of the 20th century, including fascism. And there was another huge piece of the puzzle that emerged from all this: the media. The press figured out that stories about youth, especially rebellious, dangerous youth, sold newspapers like crazy. It was explosive. And in turn, young people figured out that the media could give them a platform and identity. That relationship, forged a century ago, is still at the absolute center of our culture today. So the next time you think about what it means to be young, or you see a news story about a new youth trend, just remember this century-old battle. That core tension between being true to yourself and serving a cause bigger than yourself, between being a rebel and being a patriot, that conflict never really ended. It was forged in the past, but it's still shaping who we are today.